The air grew colder as the sky turned a deep purple. The transition from day to night was always fascinating, a blend of colors that painted the sky in hues of mystery and wonder. The quiet street below seemed to hold its breath as if waiting for something to happen. It was getting late, shadows stretched out, twisting familiar streets into something unknown. The once welcoming neighborhood transformed into a labyrinth of dark shapes and eerie silence. Each step we took seemed to echo louder than the last, amplifying the growing sense of unease. My buddy Phan and I were heading home. We often took this route. It was our routine, a path we knew like the back of our hands. The comfort of familiarity usually made the walk pleasant, filled with casual conversations and laughter. It was a shortcut, right through the old alley behind Maple Street. The alley was a relic of the past, with overgrown vines and a sense of abandonment that made it both intriguing and intimidating. Phan never liked that alley. It always made him uneasy. He would often joke about it being haunted, but there was always a hint of genuine fear in his voice. I never thought much of it, just an alley, dark, yeah. A little creepy, sure, but to me it was just a quicker way to get home. The stories and rumors never really bothered me. But we were just passing through. What could happen? We had done it countless times before without incident. It was just another part of our routine, a small adventure in our otherwise mundane lives. Tonight, though, something felt different. Even from the car, the alley felt colder. The usual sounds of the night were absent, replaced by an unsettling silence that seemed to amplify our every move. The air hung heavy. I could feel Phan tense up beside me. His usual chatter was replaced by a tense silence, and I could sense his growing discomfort. His grip on his backpack tightened. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just another night, nothing to worry about. But the feeling of unease was hard to shake off. "Just another night, right?" I said, trying to break the silence. My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. I hoped a bit of conversation would lighten the mood. Phan just nodded, his eyes fixed on the alley entrance. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by a look of intense focus. It was as if he was expecting something to emerge from the shadows. We entered the alley. The darkness seemed to swallow us whole, the dim streetlights barely piercing through the thick shadows. It felt like stepping into another world, one where the rules of reality were twisted and bent. The shadows seemed to press in closer, almost as if they were alive, breathing and watching our every move. Each step we took echoed ominously, amplifying the sense of dread that hung in the air. The engine noise echoed off the brick walls. It sounded wrong, distorted, like a ghostly wail reverberating through the narrow passage. The sound seemed to twist and turn, much like the alley itself. Phan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I could tell he was on edge, more than usual. His eyes darted around, scanning the shadows as if expecting something to leap out at us. "See? Nothing to it," I said, trying to sound casual. But even I felt a shiver run down my spine. The alley had a grip on us, an invisible hand that tightened with every passing second. The air was thick with a strange energy. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was as if the alley itself was alive, pulsating with a malevolent force that we couldn't see but could definitely feel. I just wanted to get out of there. We drove slowly, the car's headlights barely cutting through the oppressive darkness. Each inch forward felt like a mile, the tension in the air growing thicker with every moment. Each turn felt heavier, like the alley itself was pulling us in. The walls seemed to close in, the path ahead narrowing with every twist and turn. It was as if the alley was a living entity, determined to keep us within its grasp. Phan's breathing was shallow. He kept looking over his shoulder, his anxiety palpable. It was clear that he felt the same oppressive force that I did, the same sense of impending doom. "What is it, man?" I asked, my voice tight. The words felt heavy, weighed down by the oppressive atmosphere. I needed to know if he was seeing or feeling something that I wasn't. He shook his head. "It's nothing," he mumbled, but I didn't believe him. His eyes told a different story, one of fear and uncertainty. The alley had a grip on him too, and it wasn't letting go. Then it hit me too. A wave of cold air washed over us. The temperature dropped instantly. My breath fogged up the car windows, but it wasn't just the cold. There was a presence. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. I gripped the steering wheel. My heart pounded in my chest. I glanced at Phan. His eyes were wide with fear. He was staring straight ahead, following the road as it curved around the bend. "Phan," I started, my voice a whisper, "what do you see?" He didn't answer. He just kept staring. Then he whispered, "I think we need to turn around. Now." I didn't argue. Something told me that turning around was a very good idea. I slammed the car into reverse, tires squealed against the pavement, but as I turned the wheel my blood ran cold. Blocking the entire alley was a building, a massive, imposing mansion. It wasn't there before, it couldn't have been. The mansion was a Gothic nightmare. Tall spires reached for the sky. Dark windows stared down at us like empty eyes. There was an unnatural stillness about it, an oppressive silence that seemed to suck the air out of my lungs. How did that get there? I stammered, my voice shaking. Phan was silent, his face was pale, his eyes fixed on the mansion. The mansion pulsed with a faint, eerie light like a heartbeat. Panic surged through me. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The engine roared, but the car didn't move. It was stuck, as if the alley itself was holding us captive. I tried again, but the engine sputtered and died. We were trapped. The mansion loomed closer, its shadow swallowing us whole. The air grew colder, heavier. It felt like the walls were closing in. I couldn't breathe. "We need to get out of here," Phan whispered, his voice strained. He was right. We had to get out, now. I fumbled for my phone, but the battery was dead, of course. Section 6. Unmasking the past. Desperation clawed at me. We were trapped, with no way to call for help. I looked at Phan, his eyes were closed. He was mumbling something under his breath. "Phan?" I asked. He opened his eyes. They were filled with a strange, distant look. He began to speak, but his voice wasn't his own. It was deeper, raspy. He spoke of a family, a tragedy, a fire, and a darkness that consumed them all. His words washed over me, cold and unsettling. He spoke of the mansion, of its hunger. It fed on fear, on despair. It was a beacon, drawing in lost souls, trapping them forever within its walls. Section 7. A glimmer of hope. Suddenly, Phan went silent. He collapsed back in his seat, his chest heaving. He looked at me, his eyes filled with terror. "It wants us here," he gasped, "but there's a way out. A hidden door." Hope flickered in the darkness. He pointed to the glove compartment. "There's something in there. A journal. It tells the story of this place." His voice was weak, a mere whisper. I scrambled for the glove compartment, my hands shaking. Inside I found a leather-bound journal. Its pages were old, brittle. I flipped through them, my heart pounding in my chest. Sketches of the mansion, diagrams. And then, I saw it. A map. It showed a secret passage, a way out. Section 8. Flight into Fear. We stumbled out of the car and into the suffocating darkness. The air was thick with the smell of decay and damp earth. Following the map, we moved cautiously toward the mansion. Each step felt like walking into the jaws of a beast. We found the hidden door, concealed behind overgrown ivy. It creaked open, revealing a narrow passage. The air inside was frigid, sending shivers down my spine. We had no choice. We had to keep moving. The passage was a labyrinth of twisting corridors and narrow staircases. Cobwebs brushed against our faces, and the only sound was our own ragged breathing. The mansion was alive around us, its presence a suffocating weight. Section 9. The Lingering Dread. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we emerged from the passage. The darkness had been suffocating, pressing in on us from all sides, and the relief of the open air was almost overwhelming. We stumbled out, gasping for breath, our hearts pounding in our chests. We were outside, the cool night air stinging our lungs. The stars above seemed indifferent to our plight, twinkling serenely in the vast expanse of the night sky. The moon cast a pale glow, illuminating our path as we tried to gather our bearings. The mansion stood behind us, its silhouette stark against the rising sun. It looked almost peaceful in the early morning light. But we knew better. The horrors we had witnessed within its walls were still fresh in our minds, and the sight of it sent a shiver down our spines. We didn't look back. We just ran. Our footsteps echoed in the empty streets, a frantic rhythm that matched the beating of our hearts. Fear propelled us forward, and we moved as one, driven by a primal instinct to escape. Ran until we couldn't run anymore. Our legs gave out and we collapsed in a heap, panting and trembling. The adrenaline that had fueled our flight began to ebb, leaving us exhausted and shaken. We lay there, staring up at the sky, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Phan and I never spoke of that night again. The memories were too painful, too raw. We avoided each other's eyes, each of us lost in our own thoughts, haunted by the same images. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken fears and regrets. But I know it haunts him, it haunts me too. The nightmares come often, vivid and terrifying, dragging us back to that night. We wake up in cold sweats, our hearts racing, the echoes of our screams still ringing in our ears. The alley is still there, a dark, narrow passage that seems to hold its breath, waiting. It's a place we avoid, a place that holds too many memories. But sometimes, curiosity gets the better of us and we find ourselves drawn back, unable to resist its pull, a constant reminder of that night. The shadows seem to linger longer there, the air feels heavier. It's as if the alley itself remembers, holding on to the fear and dread that we left behind. Every creak, every rustle sends a jolt of fear through us, reminding us of what we escaped. And sometimes, when the shadows grow long, I swear I see the mansion again, looming in the distance, waiting. It's a fleeting glimpse, a trick of the light, but it's enough to send chills down my spine. The mansion is a specter, a ghost that refuses to be forgotten. The alley holds a different kind of silence now, a heavy, expectant silence. It's as if the very air is waiting, holding its breath, anticipating something. The silence is oppressive, pressing down on us, making it hard to breathe, as if something remains, trapped within its depths, something dark and malevolent, waiting to be unleashed. We can feel it, lurking just out of sight, watching us. It's a presence that we can't shake, a feeling that we can't escape, waiting for its next victims. The alley is a predator, lying in wait, ready to pounce. And we know that one day it will claim someone else, someone who won't be as lucky as we were.